In 1943, flying at 18,000 feet over Nazi-occupied Europe was supposed to keep you safe. At that height, the bombers had their escorts. The sky was your shield. Radar and formation flying were meant to make loss a number you could live with. Instead, American fighter pilots were dying faster than they could be replaced. Planes vanished, chairs at mess hall stayed empty, and a generation of young airmen simply stopped coming home. How does that happen when you've been taught that altitude equals survival? That contradiction is the spark of this story, a deadly surprise that would force pilots to question everything they'd been taught. Inside the cockpit of a P47 Thunderbolt, the world looks calm. Patchwork fields, sleepy villages, the Seine slicing like a ribbon, and at 18,000 feet, that calm feels like a promise. The canopy hums, the radial engine thumps, instruments glow. Sunlight skims the wing, and for a moment you forget everything but the sky. Pilots call this altitude safety. You can see the bomber formation spread below, the bomber boys tucked in, everything orderly. It gives you a peculiar kind of confidence, a muscle memory that says, hold your line, trust your height. It feels untouchable. It feels like the rules. This feeling is a lie. At 18,000 feet, the sky looks like safety. But in the summer of 1943, that thin blue vault becomes a slaughterhouse for the 8th Air Force. Pilots stare down at patchwork fields and think they're untouchable. They aren't. Engines howl, radios crackle, men vanish, ripped out of the sky before they can even call for help. The statistics hide behind altitude, more pilots dying each mission than can be replaced. Confidence curdles into dread. What was supposed to be a refuge turns into a place where speed, surprise, and a single mistake mean you never come home. But that comfortable idea, altitude equals safety, falls apart the moment you meet the Luftwaffe. Their Bf-109s and FW-190s climb like rockets and snap through turns that make an 18,000-foot escort look sluggish and exposed. These aren't green kids. They're battle-hardened pilots who've been sharpened by years of war and taught to exploit every weakness. They hunt with brutal efficiency. Better climb rate, tighter handling, flawless teamwork. In that thin, cold sky above France, the Americans are not the hunters. They are the prey. And the Germans have a way of turning the heavens into a killing ground. They called it the bounce. A German fighter would hang in the sun, invisible against glare, then peel down in a screaming, lethal arc. From high above, a Bf-109 or FW-190 would time its dive to catch an escorting Thunderbolt broadside, guns opening just as the P-47 rounded to meet the bombers. There was no warning, no dogfight etiquette. One instant, the sky feels safe. The next, tracer strings lace the air and metal rips like paper. Pilots learned a terrible truth. If the sun was behind you, you might not even know you were hit until it was too late. When the Luftwaffe times the bounce, there's no warning, just a flash from the sun and then hell. Cannon bursts rake a P-47's skin like a meat cleaver. Oil sprays, instruments flicker, control cables snap, and the pilot's world goes from blue to fire in a heartbeat. There's no dogfight, no drawn-out duel. Sometimes the man in the cockpit is dead before he even knows someone's pulled the trigger. The plane goes from proud and fast to a smoking husk spinning toward the earth, and the silence that follows in the radio room feels less like relief and more like a tally being kept. Every mission briefing has stopped feeling like a plan and started feeling like a roll call, a grim accounting of who might not come back. Pilots lean over maps with hollow eyes, fingers tracing routes they no longer trust. The mantra drilled into them since flight school, altitude is life, has become a bitter joke, a doctrine that looks smarter on paper than it does over a smoking wreck. Conversations grow quiet, jokes turn sour. Even veteran flyers flinch at the sound of distant engines. Doubt spreads faster than any reconnaissance report. And somewhere in those mess halls, the question is already forming. What if the rule itself is the problem? At Halesworth Air Base, Major Hub Zemke sits at the edge of the mess hall and watches empty chairs multiply like a slow, terrible tide. One seat for a man who won't return, another for a story cut short. The room hums with low conversation, but the jokes have stopped coming. The table center's half full, silverware untouched. Zemke's trained eye flicks from a pile of flight logs to a wall poster that still proclaims the old doctrine: altitude is life. It feels absurd now. The rule book that kept them alive in schoolyards and simulators is failing in the air. He feels the ledger of losses press against him, and somewhere beneath frustration and grief, a hard, dangerous question begins to take shape. Something in Zemke snaps. He's been watching empty chairs fill the mess hall for months, counting young faces that won't come back. The rule book has stopped working. So he asks the thing everyone else refuses to say out loud, a question that eats at doctrine and common sense both. What if altitude isn't the solution? It's a forbidden thought. It runs counter to every instructor, every manual, every gospel taught in the flight schools. Up equals safety. Asking it could mean career suicide. It could mean saving lives. The question hangs in the room like a dare, and for the first time, Zemke is willing to entertain the unthinkable. He sits in the mess hall among the empty chairs and turns the doctrine over in his head until it feels wrong. Altitude is life, they taught him. Climb and stay above the fight. But what if that certainty is a trap? What if being high makes you visible, predictable, slow to react? Zemke starts to picture the world inverted. Trees and hedgerows as cover, sunrise glare as an ally, speed and surprise as armor. It's a crazy, dangerous thought. It will get men killed if it fails. And yet the question keeps coming back, sharp and simple. What if the answer isn't up, but down? It sounds insane. Fly low, they say, and you give up the one thing that kept you alive up there, sight. At 200 feet, you can't see over the next hill until you're on it. Wires, trees, hedgerows, things that don't register on the instruments, become instant death. Engines can choke on dust kicked up from the fields. One misread dip, and you cartwheel into the ground. And then there's the flak, concentrated, accurate, waiting like teeth in the landscape, ready to shred a plane the moment it hangs too long in their arc. Every instinct, every manual screams, don't do it. Every flight manual, every instructor had drilled into them that low-level flight was suicide. It wasn't presented as an option. It was a rule written in capitals: climb, stay above the flak, keep the bombers in sight. Training flights, simulations, the grave-faced sergeants in the briefing room, all of it hammered home the same truth. Trees, telegraph wires, and surprise bursts of anti-aircraft fire could end you in a heartbeat. To suggest dropping into the treetops was heresy. So when Major Zemke started whispering about doing the opposite, it sounded impossible, reckless even. But he began to ask a harder question. Compared to what? But Zemke looks at the mounting losses from high-altitude combat and asks a simple, pragmatic question. Compared to what? It's not a rhetorical flourish, it's a calculation. How many men will you lose sitting at 18,000 feet, exposed to faster, sharper German tactics, versus how many you might gamble losing by flying into the teeth of flak at treetop level? Doctrine says one thing, the scoreboard says another. For a commander watching empty chairs multiply in the mess hall, the abstract bravery of altitude becomes a cold equation about replacement rates, mission effectiveness, and survival odds. That question will change everything. In September 1943, Zemke makes a decision. He pulls 3 of his best, most trusted pilots aside, quietly, away from the noise and the mourning. No ceremony, no doctrine. Just a blunt truth, they're bleeding men to the sky, and the rule book isn't working. For a moment, the future of their tactics hangs in that whispered conversation. He leans in, voice low enough that the rest of the mess hall feels miles away, and tells them to forget everything they've learned. Every altitude rule, every safe sky maxim. On the next mission, after they shepherd the bombers where they've been taught to keep them, he gives one direct, unauthorized order. Drop down. No permission slips, no higher blessing. It's a command that trades doctrine for survival. The pilots exchange looks, shock, fear, a quick calculation of courts-martial versus coffins, then a quiet, almost religious nod. It's desperate, it's illegal, it may just save their lives. Zemke doesn't hesitate.
He looks each man in the eye and says what no commander says aloud. If the brass comes after you for breaking every rule in the book, I'll take the fall. He'll face the court-martial, the papers, the shame, whatever it takes. Silence hangs heavy, broken only by the twitch of tired hands and the memory of friends who never came back from altitude. It's not bravado, it's a bargain of trust offered when the old playbook is killing them. The pilots trade looks, the gamble already written on their faces, and one by one they nod, willing to risk everything for a chance to survive. September 27, 1943. 3 P47s peel away from the bomber stream and push their throttles forward, trading the supposed safety of 18,000 feet for a desperate experiment. The sky yawns as they drop. Wind roars in the cockpit. Instruments bounce. Ground rushes up, fields and hedgerows stitching into a patchwork beneath them. They commit, nose down, fingers white on the stick, aiming for treetop level. They plummet toward the French countryside, then level out at a terrifying 200 feet. The wind rips at their cockpits. The engines scream. The world narrows to hedgerows, chimneys, and the flash of sunlight on church roofs. French farmers scramble, upturned faces, pitchforks dropped, women dragging children into doorways. As these massive fighters thunder so close, the ground seems to shake. Cattle bolt. A line of poplars becomes a looming wall. For the pilots, it is a razor-sharp moment of focus. Aim, breathe, go. And for a heartbeat, tucked under cloud and radar, they vanish from the sky. At 200 feet, they become ghosts. No shimmer, no contrail, just thunder over the treetops.
Der Radar, tuned für big blips in der Stratosphäre, ist deaf to them. Ground returns drown out tiny fast signatures und scopes stay quiet. Controllers watch flatlines und Schrack. Down on the airfield, crews keep working, utterly oblivious to the danger bearing down. On the radar scopes, there is nothing, just mountains of ground clutter und static. Die 3 Thunderbolts blenden into hedgerows und farmfields, ihre returns lost in a mess of echoes. Controllers lean forward, squinting at blank spots where aircraft should be. To anyone watching these screens, die P47s haben simply zu existieren. Dann, over einem German airfield, die 3 Thunderbolts simply materialisieren aus dem Haze, low, fast, impossibly close to the ground. On dem Tarmac, die Luftwaffe-Crews sind flatfußig, Wrenches mit Air, Pilots halb sitzt in Cockpits, everyone is stunned. Für einen Herzschlag nichts moved. The surprise is total, too fast for radio calls, too sudden for flak. They appear, engines a low roar. For a heartbeat, the airfield freezes. Then the Thunderbolts unleash hell. Tracers lace the tarmac, cannons and .50s rake fuel trucks and lined-up fighters. Flames bloom along fuselages, metal peels and wings fold. 4 FW-190s erupt and skid into fire before ground crews can even move. The strike is over in seconds, shocking, surgical. Then the P-47s peel away, already climbing for home. They peel off, throttle up, and climb back through the thin blue. 3 Thunderbolts slipping gently into the formation. No smoke, no shredded metal, no blood on the canopy. Inside the cockpits, breath comes fast and stunned. A tight, hard grin fights to break through the oxygen masks. For a moment, the rulebook feels obsolete. An unauthorized gamble has paid off. The experiment is an astonishing, unqualified success. It worked, and then some. Zemke's gamble didn't just pay off, it flipped the chessboard. At treetop level, the Germans didn't get minutes to form up and climb. They got heartbeats. Radar and lookouts were useless. Crews only saw thunder when the Thunderbolts were already across the field. Pilots scrambled, boots thudding on tarmac, straps barely fastened, and in the space of seconds, their planes were gas, flame, and ruin. The surprise was absolute, brutal, and total. A tormentor's advantage that robbed the Luftwaffe of reaction time and handed the initiative to an airplane that, until that morning, had been written off at altitude. What had been written off as a lumbering escort at altitude suddenly becomes a different animal, a blunt, brutal missile of metal and horsepower that chews up ground targets and spits pilots back into the sky. Its weight and ruggedness let it absorb hits that would cripple sleeker fighters. And when those .50 caliber strings open up at 350 miles per hour, there's simply no time for flat crews to aim. From the ground, it's a blur. From the air, it's shock and ruin. And when German fighters try to chase, the whole fight is rewritten. The moment a German fighter commits to chase, everything shifts. No longer a broad sky of maneuvering room, the fight collapses into a narrow, dangerous theater. Hills, hedgerows, wires, and treetops. The P-47's blistering speed and ruggedness turn the terrain into a weapon. German agility becomes a liability as pursuers are forced into tight, high-speed moves with the ground alarmingly close. They hug the deck, trees whipping past like broken ribs. Hills rising and falling under the Thunderbolt's belly. German fighters, designed for climbs and tight turns, are suddenly forced into savage, high-speed maneuvers with the ground rushing up beneath them, inches from catastrophe. One slip and it's over. Turning rivers, villages, and forests from scenery into shields and traps. Rivers, villages, and forests become shields and traps. Pilots use hedgerows like curtains, rivers as moats, villages as blind spots. Thunder is so low the dirt kicks up. To the Germans, the sky is empty, and then a thunderbolt explodes into view. But the same landscape that hides you can also snare you. A hidden power line, a sudden ridge, a treetop you didn't see. Every hill is both ally and ambush. Every turn is a gamble taken at hundreds of miles an hour. But this new battlefield creates new problems. Problems a P-47's designers never meant it to face. The Thunderbolt is a tank in the sky, rugged, fast, and built to shrug off hits from above. Up in the trees, however, that same heft becomes a liability. Branches tear at control surfaces, cooling lines and radiator guts are suddenly exposed, and the cockpit's thin armor isn't enough when every run turns you into a target for small arms and concentrated flak. Pilots can cheat death with speed and skill, but you can't keep asking men to outfly a plane's limits. If these fighters are going to hunt from the deck, the plane itself has to change, and fast. Back at Republic Aviation in late 1943, engineers poured into hangars and drafting rooms, urgent and listening. The pilots' street-level reports, rubbing trees, shrapnel scars, near misses, became blueprints. They cut away the high-altitude thinking and started bolting on strength. Thicker spars, reinforced panels, hardened coolant in hydraulic lines. Prototypes rolled out, tested harshly, each change born straight from what men survived on the deck. Back at Republic Aviation, the fixes start fast and brutal. Armor plating bolted around the engine and cockpit to stop shrapnel. Coolant lines and hydraulic systems rerouted and hardened so a single burst of ground fire won't turn you into a flaming husk. It costs speed and adds weight, but it buys survivability. Still, metal can't aim for you, and the pilots need a new sight. Armor and hardened systems help, but the pilots face another blunt problem: how to put rounds where they count in a world measured in heartbeats. The telescopic lead compensation gun sights, built for 18,000 feet, are useless when trucks, trains, and fighters pop into view for a single second before they're gone. At 300+ miles an hour, you don't have range tables, you have instincts. Targets appear, bleed out, disappear behind hedgerows. Pilots squint, master snap shooting, and trust gut reflexes. But reflexes alone won't win this. They need a fundamentally different sighting system that gives a pilot an instant, usable aiming point the moment a target bursts into view. By February 1944, a practical miracle showed up in the cockpit: the K-14 gyroscopic gun sight. Instead of guessing lead on a fleeting truck or an exposed fuel truck, a pilot could put a tiny, glowing pipper on the target, trust the gyroscope to account for speed and movement, squeeze the trigger, and let the guns do the math. No more frantic burst and hope. No more long-range trigonometry while the world flashes past. It turned snap shooting from art into repeatable technique, steadied trembling hands, and gave Thunderbolt pilots the confidence to dive low and fire with terrifying precision. And suddenly, those .850 caliber guns were surgical. With the K-14 pipper glowing in the windshield, the P47's .850 caliber guns stop being a scattershot hail of lead and become surgical tools. A burst, a tracer ribbon, and a truck, fuel dump, or fighter is vaporized in the space of a heartbeat. Pilots learn to squeeze, lead instinctively, and trust the airplane to cut through iron and flesh alike. Ground crews watched in stunned silence as entire columns were erased before they could react. That kind of concentrated, terrifying precision rewrote what air interdiction could do, and yet some targets demanded more than gunfire alone, introducing a new set of dangers. Guns could rip a convoy apart, but bombs posed a terrifying new problem. Drop a 500-pound bomb from 50 feet, and the blast and shrapnel would catch you too, turning your own Thunderbolt into a smoking wreck. There was no room for sloppy timing or guesswork. Release too late, you die. Release too early, you miss. It was a problem that demanded a clever, brutal solution. Bombing at treetop height created a new problem. Drop too low and your own blast takes you. The fix was borrowed from the Pacific: skip bombing. P47s dive flat and fast, release a 500-pounder that skips across fields like a stone and slams into a bunker or fuel truck. The maneuver is brutal, precise, and unforgiving, and it soon becomes clear. It's not the plane that must change next, it's the pilot. The most important modification wasn't welded steel or a new gun sight, it's the pilot's minds. You can't bolt courage onto a cockpit, you have to rewire instincts. Men trained to climb and fight at 18,000 feet had to unlearn everything. Stop searching the sun for dives, stop waiting for minutes to react. Learn to trust speed and the airplane instead of altitude. Training became brutal and clinical. Low-level navigation drills over the English countryside, split-second snap shooting runs, mock attacks through hedgerows, and relentless repetition until terror turned to muscle memory. Instructors were the survivors of those first raids, teaching one lesson above all: hesitate and you die. By spring, that lesson would harden into doctrine. By April 1944, it's official. Low-level flying is no longer optional, it's mandatory. New pilots spend long days learning to keep a Thunderbolt screaming at 50 feet over hedgerows and farms, eyes trained to pick out a road cut, a telegraph pole, a shadow that means danger. They learn split-second judgment, when to throttle, when to tuck, when to bank, because a moment's hesitation here doesn't cost a mission, it costs your life. Battle-scarred instructors pound home the new gospel: altitude kills, speed saves, and then put the men to work practicing snap shooting. They practice snap shooting, a brutal drill taught at 50 feet and screaming speed. Scan the hedgerow, pick the glint of metal, slap the K-14 pipper onto a truck or a tail, and fire before it vanishes. 1 or 2 seconds. Breath held. fingers locked. Muscle memory must outrun terror. The instructors, men who survived the first reckless experiments, shadow every pass, correcting the tiny hesitations that mean the difference between glory and a grave. They aren't gentle teachers. These instructors are the survivors of the first experiments, men who came back with soot on their uniforms and holes in their planes, and they teach with the calm ferocity of people who watched friends die and learned the hard way. Their lesson is brutal and simple. Altitude kills you. Speed saves you. Commit to the deck. Pull up only when you've outrun the danger, not when fear tells you to. Trust this airplane to take a beating. Its ruggedness is your margin for error. Snap shooting was technique, yes, but this was mindset. Instant, savage, and utterly non-negotiable. April 8, 1944. This is the day the Luftwaffe learns that nowhere in France is safe anymore. Months of quiet training and tweaks, a dozen whispered experiments, all come together at dawn. Intelligence spots 2 elite fighter wings forward near Normandy. Zemke assembles 48 Thunderbolts, and they fly like a single living thing. They cross the coast, split into small flights, drop to the deck, and become hunting shadows. Roaring over hedgerows, appearing from the haze at 350 miles per hour, tearing into parked fighters, fuel trucks, and maintenance areas before anyone can even raise an alarm. In minutes, whole squadrons go up in fire and confusion. Controllers frantically vector intercepts at ghosts, and the idea of a safe French airfield dies that morning. For months, Zemke has been quietly perfecting the tactic and training his pilots. Low, fast, brutal practice runs until the maneuvers live in their bones. Rehearsals at dawn, snap shooting drills, and heart-stopping practice dives turn fear into instinct. All of it is still hush-hush, an experiment born of grief and stubbornness. Then the intelligence arrives. 2 elite German fighter wings parked forward, right near Normandy. Suddenly, this is no longer a trick for a few desperate flights. It's an opportunity and a knife-edge decision. If Zemke is right, the coming strike could change everything. For months, Zemke has been perfecting a new kind of violence, drilling men to fly like ghosts. Intelligence even confirms 2 elite Luftwaffe wings parked forward, ripe for a strike. The Germans, comfortable behind belts of flak and confident radar nets, treat those fields like fortresses. Hangars full of fighters, ground crews at ease, pilots sipping coffee and waiting for orders. That complacency is their blind spot. What looks invulnerable from a distance is exquisitely fragile up close. They think the sky itself protects them. They are about to discover how lethal surprise and a handful of stubborn Thunderbolts can be. Zemke doesn't send fighters to guard bombers, he sends killers. 48 P47 Thunderbolts climb into the dawn and head straight for the heart of occupied France. No bombers to escort, no graceful dogfights. This is a pure hunt, coordinated, surgical, and brutal. The Germans, convinced their fields are safe, have no idea the storm already has their coordinates. After crossing the coast, the big formation fractures into tight flights of 4 and, without ceremony, drops to the deck. Treetops rush past. Exhausts roar. The earth vibrates under their thunder as 48 Thunderbolts scream across Normandy at blistering speed, so low the hedgerows blur. Each flight a hunting pack, invisible until they're on top of you. At 0747, the first flight slams its target. 16 Bf-109s clustered on the tarmac, refueling, engines cold, pilots casually climbing into cockpits, mechanics still wiping their hands. Some men even have coffee. It looks ordinary. It looks safe. In reality, it's a line of sitting ducks. There's no warning. One heartbeat, and surprise becomes destruction. They roar out of the morning haze at better than 350 miles an hour. Sudden, thunderous, impossible to track. German gunners fumble for sights that simply aren't there. Tracers eat the air. Smokeless flashes bloom on fuel trucks and runways. The P-47s hit like freight trains, brutal, precise, and gone before anyone can blink. In less than 90 seconds, the field will be a burning ruin. 90 seconds of concentrated fire. 11 German fighters turned into burning wrecks. Flames flare, fuel ignites, and there's no time for organized response. Pilots sprint for cover while aircraft melt into fire and smoke. Then the P-47s peel off, climbing away at full throttle, gone into the haze before help can arrive. Brutal, surgical, and perfectly timed. The genius of the attack was its timing. As the first airfield frantically radioed for help, the Americans were already on the second run, then the third. Each strike bled into the next, no pause, no chance to regroup. By the time controllers keyed in an intercept, their targets had moved miles, and flames were already lighting fields they thought secure. Luftwaffe controllers are completely bewildered. Radar blips blink, then vanish. Frantic voices crackle over the wires as they vector fighters into empty sky. Pilots climb and burn fuel, only to find nothing there. By the time anyone realizes what happened, the Americans are already 40 miles and minutes ahead, leaving German interceptors scrambling after ghosts. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, one of Zemke's original guinea pigs, spots a whole squadron of FW-190s massed on the field for a morning briefing. Clustered, engines cold, almost ceremonial. He flashes the signal, drops like a hammer, and the P-47s roar in, guns ripping into parked fighters. His gun camera would later show pilots sprinting for cover as aircraft burst into flame. Johnson's gun camera footage is chilling, grainy, relentless proof of what happened in those split seconds. On the screen, German pilots sprint for cover, jackets flapping, faces stunned, as their fighters suddenly bloom into fire and metal. Cockpits erupt, wings fold, and fuel trucks along the ramp detonate in orange geysers that throw debris and black smoke into the morning. There is no dogfight choreography here, no honorable duel. Just instant annihilation, a brutal punctuation mark on 2 years of training. You can feel the disbelief in every frame, the ordinary routine snapping into chaos, and how, in an instant, bases become graves. It lasts 11 seconds. Johnson's report is clinical. Time over target. 11 seconds. 11 seconds of noise and fire and metal tearing itself apart. 11 seconds in which fuel trucks become torches. Parked fighters go from idle to inferno. Ground crews vanish under burning sheets of canvas. He lists the facts like a ledger. Targets, hits, burn times. But the footage tells the rest. Men scrambling, gear immolated, the careful accumulation of pilots, spare parts, training hours, and factory output erased in a heartbeat. It reads like a math problem and lands like a bullet. 2 years of Luftwaffe investment turned to ash, and the Allies now have a blunt, terrifying proof that surprise at treetop level works. The April offensive, nicknamed Chattanooga Choo Choo, rolled out like a freight train across occupied France, and for the Luftwaffe, it was pure devastation. Pilots who had cut their teeth on risky experiments now moved as a single, ruthless machine. Surprise, speed, and fire. Airfields, fuel dumps, and fighters were struck in seconds. By the time German controllers could react, the damage was done, and the tally would be brutal. The tally was brutal and unmistakable. 47 German fighters incinerated on the ground, 23 locomotives ruptured, and countless supply depots and fuel trucks turned into smoking ruins. A scorched ledger of logistics wiped clean. In minutes, the Luftwaffe's reserves vanished, and the rail arteries that fed frontline units were severed, choking fuel, ammunition, and reinforcements before they could move. Witnesses later spoke of black smoke rising over the countryside, of tracks twisted like ribbon. For Germany, this wasn't just planes lost, it was the slow collapse of an operational system.
The damage was strategic, immediate, and crucially far harder to replace than the aircraft themselves. They pay for every inch of ground with steel and blood. P-47s still get torn apart by flak, engines singed, wings shot through, and pilots walk away lucky or they don't. Low-level flying is brutal, mistakes are fatal, and the margin for error vanishes. But this is a war of math as much as bravery. Each American loss is weighed against a cascade of German casualties. Airfields burned, fighters destroyed, supply lines shredded, losses the Luftwaffe cannot replace at scale or speed. The tactic is costly, yet strategically it is crushing. That reality is exactly what will snap German commanders into action. Adolf Galland feels it like a physical blow.
Losing fighters in the air is one thing. Losing them intact on their own runways is another entirely. It strips away pilots, planes, spare parts, and the fragile logistics that let an air force fight another day. This isn't attrition, it's an attack on Germany's ability to wage war, systematic and merciless. Doctrine and complacency collapse into urgency. Where he once planned sorties and rotations, he now counts holes in hangars and holes in his map of air superiority. The realization hardens him. This must be stopped, and fast. By April 19th, the Luftwaffe's calm snaps. Galland issues frantic orders: scatter the squadrons, disperse every aircraft to fields, forests, improvised pads. Beef up flak batteries, flood the coast with searchlights, mobilize civilians as an early warning network, spotters on hedgerows, phone trees, frantic radio nets. Planes are to hide, not parade. It's a raw, desperate pivot, a patchwork of defenses thrown up overnight, loud with urgency and fear. Bold, reactive, and utterly born of panic. But one wonders if scrambling men and guns can undo the damage already done. Galland's new defenses look impressive on paper, but in the air, they collapse. The P-47 pilots stop confronting the guns head-on. They hug the deck, thread hedgerows and river valleys, and simply fly around to flak belts. Ground batteries can't track them at treetop level, and radar is blind to the clutter. What looked like a solution becomes little more than noise. The Germans tried to patch the gap with a civilian observer network, spotters along the coast, radios in village halls, and early warning web. But the French resistance turned that web into a sieve, feeding false sightings, phoning in phantom formations, and bogus alerts. Luftwaffe patrols launched after shadows over empty fields. Hours, fuel, and trust vanished. The result? Scrambled fighters chasing ghosts while real threats slipped by. Forced into a new kind of camouflage, German crews start hauling their precious fighters out of sight, into forests, under tarps, even into village barns, anything to hide them from the Thunderbolts' lightning raids. On paper, it looks sensible, fewer planes burning on the ramps. In practice, it amputates the Luftwaffe's reach. Aircraft buried in trees can't scramble. Maintenance becomes a nightmare. Pilots sit idle, skills dull, and whole squadrons become little more than immobilized trophies. The irony is brutal. By protecting their machines, the Germans have stripped them of the only thing that mattered, the ability to fly and fight. Safe, yes. Useful, no. By June 1944, the math finally catches up with the German High Command. What had once been a sovereign blue above them is now a gauntlet. Air superiority, stripped down to a colder, stranger thing they call air terror. Strategy meetings stop pretending this is just a temporary setback and turn into damage control sessions. Runways are hidden, dispersal fields multiply, and commanders watch film of their fighters burning and feel the ground shift under their feet. The Luftwaffe stops operating from strength and starts surviving in shadows. That brutal admission remaps the war in the sky, and it comes with an ugly, costly aftertaste the Americans will soon pay for. For American pilots, victory comes at a cost, brutal, immediate, and personal. Survival is measured in inches and seconds. A sliver of hesitation can turn a roaring run into a final run. They learn to read the countryside like a clock. A line of trees, a break in a hedge, the tiny, terrified scatter of birds. The only warning that a nearly invisible wire or cable is strung across their path. Hands tremble at the throttle, eyes burn from constant focus, and every safe landing feels like a reprieve borrowed from luck, not promise. The sky is won, but the price is paid at treetop level. They learn to watch for birds. One instant a flock, the next every head in the flight line snaps to attention, because those sudden scatterings are the only warning that a wire is ahead. But power lines are different. At 400 miles an hour, they vanish, a hair-thin ghost against a green patchwork of fields. A single cable can shear off a wing or chop a tail in a heartbeat, turning a roaring plane into a dead weight that tumbles toward the earth.
There's no time to scream, no time to pull up, just the blind violence of metal and sky, and the knowledge that the smallest, invisible thing can end you on the spot. The psychological toll is immense. Every mission rewires a man's nerves. Adrenaline becomes the new baseline. Focus so taut their hands shake long after they climb out of the cockpit. Nights are a second battlefield. Twitchy sleep, sudden starts at the sound of an engine, replaying a throat-stopping moment in infinite slow motion. Survivors carry the smell of burning fuel in their dreams and the weight of faces they couldn't save. Jokes get thinner. Letters home grow quieter. The constant, grinding intensity turns bravery into exhaustion, discipline into brittle instinct, and under that pressure, some pilots begin to fray, while others lean harder into risk.
Some pilots simply break, asking for transfers, their hands still trembling from the last mission, the noise and terror too much to carry on. Others do the opposite. Adrenaline mutates into bravado, and risk becomes a drug. They push harder, pull tighter, and pay for it with lives. Every sortie is a test of nerves and judgment. A single misread wire or a reckless turn can end a career in a heartbeat. The air war has turned personal and brutal, thinning crews and sharpening instincts at once. And with the biggest test on the horizon, every man knows there's no more margin for error. June 6, 1944, D-Day. The entire success of the Normandy invasion rests on one fragile assumption. American air power can keep the Luftwaffe pinned to its hangars. If that fails, the beaches die with the first tide. Troops, ships, and the invasion itself exposed to German fighters. The men in the cockpits know this. They are exhausted, jittery, and haunted by friends who didn't come back. For months, they've rewritten the rules, flying low, striking fast, trusting speed over height. But now, theory meets history. In the cold gray before dawn, their unproven gamble will face its ultimate test. Everything comes down to this. Zemke's radical tactic is about to face its ultimate test. It's June 6, 1944, D-Day, and the invasion's success hinges on one brutal fact. Keep the Luftwaffe pinned, or the beaches die with the troops. There are no more experiments. The pilots who learned to hug the earth, to turn forests into cover and surprise into a weapon, now strap into their Thunderbolts with numb hands and steady jaws. Engines warm. Radios go quiet. A dozen tiny decisions will decide thousands of lives. If this gamble fails, history changes. If it works, the free world gets its chance. Before the first landing craft hits the beach, 289 P47 Thunderbolts are already screaming across France at treetop level. They rumble like a moving thunderstorm, wings a whisper above hedgerows, prop wash shredding the morning calm, engines a white noise roar that leaves no room for surprise. Find the fields, hit fast, vanish. This is airborne shock turned into a weapon. The strike begins at 4:45 a.m., surgical, precise. Those 289 Thunderbolts are already streaking low. The morning's still a half-light when the first runs slice across the countryside. It's timed to catch German dawn patrols unready. Mechanics still on the tarmac, pilots climbing into cockpits, radios warming up. By the time alarms go off, the sky is already full of thunder. There's almost no time to react. At a sleepy Luftwaffe field, 8 Thunderbolts scream over the hedgerows and lock onto a row of Bf-109s taxiing for takeoff. Mechanics and pilots freeze, wrenches mid-air. Fuel trucks sit idle. There is nowhere for the German pilots to run. No altitude, no dispersed shelter, only a thin strip of runway and seconds to react as thunder closes in. They hit like a thunderbolt, literally. One moment the Bf-109s are idling on the tarmac, pilots thinking morning routine. The next, 8 P47s drop in low and fast, noses down, guns coughing fire. Tracers stitch the runway. Fuel trucks erupt. Pilots never finish their checks. In less than a handful of minutes, 18 German fighters are burning wrecks, metal folded and wings aflame before anyone can even throttle up. The shock is instantaneous, the damage irreversible. No dogfight, no warning, just sudden, brutal annihilation, and the first taste of what will become a rolling wave across Normandy. The hedge-hopping tactic had become more than a trick. It had turned into a continuous, rolling wave of destruction across Normandy. Thunderbolts hammered airfields, rail lines, and convoys, strike after strike, mile after mile. German defenses couldn't breathe. Pilots barely landed before refueling or roaring back out. Smoke trailed like a wound across the countryside. And with every pass, the Luftwaffe's options narrowed toward collapse. There is no escape for the Luftwaffe. Airfields ignite like trapdoors, planes welded to the earth, fuel trucks exploding, hangars collapsing into firestorms. Pilots run, bewildered, as control towers fill with smoke. No scramble can save them. Scramble routes are severed.
Field by field der German fighter force ist erreicht, nicht in dogfights above the clouds, but buried in dem dirt, wo sie einst fällt safe. Auf 8 Uhr abends, back in dem Bunker, Hitler explodiert. Schaut's, slammt sein Fist auf Maps, demands zu know, wo ist Air Force gegangen? Officers scramble für Antworten. Reports kommen ein, breathless und terrible. Rohrende Feuer auf Frenchen Runways. Hangar turned into blackened skeletons. Fuel trucks detoniert. Pilots Planes emuliert, bevor sie climben können. Der Reply landet wie ein Verdikt. Die Luftwaffe ist nicht missing, es ist Brennen auf Frenchen Airfields. Für einen Moment der Stunned Silence, dann Furie, die Realisation, dass der Enemy hat den German Sky in ein Graveyard hitzt like a blow. Alltag die P47 pressen ihre relentlesse Attack, Wave after Wave, screamen an Treetop Level, bis der Sky fühlt wie ein Feuer.
Pilots are pushed to the edge. Some fly 4 sorties in a single day, hopping out, wiping oil from their hands, downing black coffee, and climbing back into a scarred cockpit with a throat full of dust and a heart still pounding from the last run. There's no time to think, only to do. Spot, dive, fire, and haul back to the strip. Every minute counts, and every landing hands the plane straight to crews who must refuel and rearm it in record time. On the ground, crews move like a single furious machine. Hands black with oil, lungs rattling from cold and smoke, refueling and rearming Thunderbolts in minutes instead of hours. They strip off spent belts, patch bullet holes, shove in fresh ammo, and hustle planes back to the line. No rest, no ceremony. Time is the enemy, and they steal it back, plane by plane. With ground crews barely pausing between landings, the pilots stop looking only for enemy fighters and start hunting logistics. Anything that moves toward the Normandy beaches, trains, fuel trucks, panzer columns, even supply-filled convoys and bridges becomes target practice. They strike at speed and vanish. Wheels, rails, engines disappear in cascades of fire. Movement itself is erased. By the end of D-Day, the numbers told the definitive story of the battle for the skies. Minutes and miles became the currency of victory. Sorties piled up. Enemy responses dwindled to anemic attempts.
What had been brute force trial and error, low-level ambushes, reinforced Thunderbolts, skip-bombing tricks, now paid off in a single brutal ledger. Overwhelming presence in the air, crippling losses on the ground, and a Luftwaffe that simply couldn't get back into the fight. Pilots who had spent months courting deft flew multiple sorties. Crews turned planes around in a blur, and the air above Normandy became, for the first time, a safe corridor for invasion. The final tally is almost absurd in its imbalance. The Allies flew more than 14,000 sorties that day, hurricanes of metal, fuel, and gunpowder sweeping the skies and the land below, while the Luftwaffe, paralyzed and shattered, managed a pitiful 319 sorties in response. Those numbers aren't just sums on a clipboard. They're the difference between chaos and control, between beachheads that lived and beachheads that would have bled. Air power became a one-way hammer. German commanders watched their planes burn on the ground and their pilots scramble for non-existent cover, while Allied aircraft hunted trains, tanks, and runways with surgical brutality. D-Day's air story was decisive. All those late-night briefings, dangerous experiments, and pilots who ignored the rulebook had one thing to show for themselves: results. It's in the numbers. 14,000 Allied sorties to the Luftwaffe's 319. But more than that, it's in the sight of smoke pouring off enemy airfields and the sudden, stunned quiet where German engines should have been roaring. 7 months of brutal trial-and-error innovation hadn't just sharpened tactics, it rewired the battlefield. The P47s stopped being a lumbering escort and became a treetop predator. And on D-Day, that predator was surgical, owning the air, crippling the enemy, and handing the invasion a margin it could not have won any other way. It sounds impossible. A tactic born of desperation and flat-out insubordination against every manual and every instructor ends up securing the skies for the largest invasion in history? Men who were taught that altitude was safety chose the opposite. They dove to the treetops, turned surprise into a weapon, and used speed and terrain to turn a lumbering fighter into a predator. The result was surgical and strategic. German fighters and supply lines were shredded on the ground. Luftwaffe control collapsed, and the air over Normandy was no longer a threat, but a shield. It was risky, costly, and messy, but it won D-Day. Those brutal months over France forced a hard truth into the books. Air power wasn't just about height and formation flying anymore. Surprise, speed, terrain, and shock became doctrine. Planes were redesigned with armor and hardened systems. Sights and weapons were rethought for split-second strikes. Training shifted to treetop runs, skip bombing, and snap shooting. Air-ground coordination and fast, decentralized decision-making moved from theory to practice. That mindset rippled forward, shaping close air support, forward air control, and even the A-10's DNA, and it rewired how militaries conceive, equip, and train for air war for decades after. It wasn't a one-off trick or a lucky raid. Those low-level, high-speed raids were studied, codified, and taught until they became the backbone of close air support doctrine. Tactics once whispered about in mess halls turned into official tactics, training syllabi, and mission planning, changing how air forces thought about supporting ground troops, protecting convoys, and denying enemy mobility. And that shift forced designers and commanders to prioritize survivability, strafing power, and precision at low altitude, a practical legacy that wouldn't vanish with the P-47, but would be handed down, adapted, and amplified in every war that followed. You can trace the Thunderbolt's DNA across decades of combat. The rugged armor, the heavy, precise guns, the doctrine of fast, low, brutal support. All of it shows up over Korea and Vietnam, and, most obviously, in the A-10 Warthog, a plane built to do exactly what the P-47 taught crews to do. Engineers and pilots took lessons from treetop raids: redundancy, survivability, gunnery that works at a heartbeat's notice, and turned them into design and doctrine.
Close air support became a deliberate craft, not a byproduct of air war. The Thunderbolt didn't just fly, it discovered its purpose in the mud, to own the battlefield from the ground up. The Thunderbolt's true purpose was found not in the stratosphere, but in the mud, to own the battlefield from the ground up. Built as a high-altitude escort, it was reinvented by pilots who chose treetop speed over the false safety of height, turning armor and raw firepower into a weapon against supply lines, airfields, and armor columns. Strafing runs, skip bomb hits, snap shooting at a disappearing target, the plane and its tactics reshaped how air power supported ground armies. That gritty lesson passed into later jets and even the A-10, and the men who bet their lives on it would soon be honored for changing the rules. He should have been dragged into a courtroom. He should have been stripped of command. Instead, Hub Zemke walks away not with a reprimand, but with the Distinguished Service Cross pinned to his chest. Official recognition for a decision born out of desperation and gut instinct. It's a small, sharp reversal, an act of insubordination turned strategic masterstroke. The medal doesn't just honor him, it rewrites the ledger of what leadership looks like in war: daring, pragmatic, accountable. By saving lives and proving the tactic, Zemke forced the Air Force to admit that sometimes rules must bend so victory can stand. But the medal was only the punctuation. The real victory was what Zemke's gamble did to the Air Force itself. It cracked open a rigid chain of command and let ideas flow up from the cockpit. Pilots who saw problems were now trusted to fix them. Mechanics, engineers, and flight commanders were encouraged to tinker, test, and iterate on the fly. Training, maintenance, and tactics stopped being sacred scripts and became living tools, constantly revised by frontline experience. That shift, permission to break a rule in service of a result, turned inflexible doctrine into a fast, adaptive culture of innovation that would shape American air power for decades. Today, if you visit the Air Force Museum, you'll see a P47 Thunderbolt, often displayed as the high-altitude escort it was designed to be: polished, placarded, posed beside tidy text about bomber protection. And it's easy to walk away thinking you understand its story. What the placards don't capture is the Thunderbolt's dirtier, louder life at treetop level. The skip bombs and snap shooting, the engines screaming over hedgerows, the frantic turnarounds that burned men to the bone. Stand beneath that wing and you can almost hear Normandy again. Its true legacy isn't the stratosphere, it's the battlefield, and you can still hear that lesson in the A-10's howl. But it's true, most lethal legacy was forged much lower, in the dirt and danger of the treetops. Not in the thin, antiseptic blue where doctrine had parked it, but down where mud spat up and wires waited like hidden guillotines. Up there, the Thunderbolt was lumbering. Down here, it became a predator, a rolling thunderbolt that mined the ground with .50 caliber justice. That shift rewired tactics, pilot training, even how engineers bolted armor and sights into metal. Museums still show the escort role, sure, but the real story of the P-47 is written in low clouds, snapped trees, and the men who chose to reinvent aerial warfare by flying into the danger. That legacy didn't arrive in a boardroom or a test lab. It was born in the cockpit, in the split-second decision of pilots who stared down certain death and chose to break the rules. They dove into the trees, into wires and flak, trusting speed and nerve over doctrine. It was ugly, it was terrifying, and it worked. Those daring, desperate missions rewrote how air power was used, turning lumbering thunderbolts into surgical predators and turning doctrine on its head. What began as insubordination became a new kind of courage, practical, brutal, and utterly decisive. They proved that sometimes the most radical, counterintuitive idea is the only one that can save you. A handful of pilots who chose down over up, instinct over doctrine, and risked court-martial for a chance to keep their friends alive. It was a brutal, practical experiment. Dive to the treetops, become invisible to radar, strike with blinding speed, and climb away before anyone knew what hit them. The payoff was messy and costly, but immediate. Planes destroyed, supply lines shattered, and an air war rewritten. Those men didn't just win battles. They forced the Air Force to learn, adapt, and trust results over rulebooks. It shows that victory isn't always found by following the plan, but by those brave enough to write a new one mid-flight. Men who traded textbooks for gut instinct, who cut the throttle and dove into danger because the old rules were killing them. Picture it: dawn, treetops blurring, 850s spitting fire, pilots improvising tactics on the fly and learning from every near miss. They paid for that innovation with blood and sleepless nights, but their risk saved D-Day and remade air power. Their choice turned doctrine into something that answers to results, not reverence. A reminder that courage and clear thinking can rewrite what everyone thought was inevitable. Their story isn't just history, it's a challenge. When Major Hub Zemke and a few pilots ignored doctrine, they didn't act out of arrogance. They acted because the rules were killing them. That moment, a dare to try the opposite of everything they'd been taught, turned desperation into doctrine. So ask yourself, what accepted truth in your world is quietly costing lives, time, or opportunity? What rule exists because it's always existed, not because it works? You don't need permission to experiment, but you do need courage, clear thinking, and a willingness to bear the consequences. What will you rewrite?